Hello and welcome to a Woman on a Mission podcast, the online destination for women and men who want to create a life that they truly love, one without limits, one with more balance, more self-belief and endless possibilities for the future. I'm your host, Deborah Craig. I'm an intuitive life mentor and hypnotherapist, and every week I'll bring you guest experts, individuals with lived experience, and of course, I'll share client case studies so that you can experience some of the best ideas and solutions to help you solve real life problems so that you can live a happy and healthy life and of course become the best version of yourself every single day. You see, I've found that to reach our full potential in our careers, relationships, our health goals, and in life, we must take a look at what's going on the inside of ourselves, as this is where the change really starts. I hope you enjoy the podcast, and remember, leave feedback and comments so that I can continue to bring you content and guests that truly help you become the best version of yourself so that you can live a life that you love. Enjoy the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of a Woman on a Mission podcast with me, Deborah Craig, intuitive life mentor and hypnotherapist. Now, I have a treat for you today. I have the most amazing, wonderful, fantastic guest that I'll be bringing on just shortly to share so much insight and motivation and a lot of inspiration on how you can absolutely transform your life, lift yourself up and become all that you can be and do and have in this lifetime. So her name is Dionne Slater. She is a rapid transformational therapist and empowerment coach. And I have had the pleasure of getting to know her very recently and couldn't wait to have her on the podcast because I know her stories, experiences are going to really bring some amazing insight for the listeners today. So without further ado, welcome, Dionne. Hi.
How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm so pleased to have you on. I'm so grateful that you came on to the podcast this week. You've got so much insight to share, and your own life experiences and transformations alone, never mind your client work, have been so inspiring, and getting to know you over this period of time has really, reminded me just about the power of the work that we do with clients and the impact that doing that inner work really has. So I will now give it a pause. I'm sure they don't want to hear me talking the whole time. So Dionne, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what it was that actually got you into working with RTT and empowering women.
Definitely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. And it's been an absolute journey over the past few years. For so long, I was basically stuck in this victimhood of life happens to me. Some people are born to be successful and have money and all the nice things, and other people just are not. It's some sort of fucked up destiny. Some people have it good, some people don't. Now, I know that the reason I was kind of in this mindset is because it was a lot to do with how I'd been brought up, as a child. Had a very dysfunctional, messy childhood, brought up in a lot of poverty, violence, drugs, alcohol, not surrounded by very, very good people. We had a lot of kind of bad adults coming in and out the house. So those were kind of my role models. A lot of criminals, for example, were the people that I was looking up to when I was a child. So it was, the kind of mindset I was brought up with was kind of you've got rich people who are basically aliens, and you've got us who are lost, lived on a really rough council estate, life happens to us, and that's just the way it is. So I didn't really know any better when I was a child. Now, the problem is that when I grew up and then into adulthood, I still had this mindset. I hadn't been taught any emotional intelligence as well. So again, totally fair enough when I was a child. But when I became an adult, I had then had the power to take radical responsibility and accountability for myself, but I chose not to. Now, this wasn't really like a conscious choice, because again, I just thought it was like, it's destiny. I am just unlucky. That's just the way it is. But when I look at it now, I was making a lot of like just the wrong choices, which were just totally not in alignment with what I actually wanted in life. So I had a lot of like, I made a lot of bad decisions around money, a lot of like poor decisions around relationships, like jobs, business, like all the things. And then I wondered why life was shit. I also didn't like facing my feelings, because like I said, I had no emotional intelligence. I was very much a reaction to like life circumstances. Like if life is good, then I'm happy. If something bad happens, then I'm really, really not good. People around me as well, I just kind of like changed my emotions to kind of reflect how they were as well. I think it was kind of like a survival thing, really, because it's like I don't want to piss anyone off, because if I do, I'll get punished. So I was kind of still doing that as an adult as well. So without realizing for so long, I was the cause of my shit life and my misery and my own poverty and all of that, until it was about, where are we now? We're like 2023 now. It got to like, yeah, it was like 2017. And I'd kind of like, I always knew that I wanted more. I always knew that I wanted more than I'd been brought up with. But at the same time, I had a lot of inner shit that I just hadn't worked on. So to the outside world in my early 20s, it looked like I had it all. I had the business. I set up as a vocal coach, had the super successful boyfriend. We would drive around in a Porsche. Everything looked amazing. So on the outside world, everything looked incredible. But on the inside world, like I was still a fucking mess, because I hadn't done the work. I hadn't done the inner work. And I just thought that life happened to me. And that's just the way it was. So eventually I ended up like basically imploding in like 2017, and left the boyfriend, moved back to Newcastle from Brighton, quit the business, even though the business was doing well. And then I just went on an absolute rampage. I was drinking every day, taking drugs, got in trouble with the law, was even potentially looking at prison at one point after an altercation I'd got myself into. Was jumping from like job to job, even ended up going into sex work, because I was just like, fuck the world. And I was an absolute mess. So that was kind of what I like to refer to now as like my spiritual smackdown, my like rock bottom. Because I was like, how did I go from like looking like I had it all to like literally just being an absolute mess? I'd like to say from then I kind of like built everything back up again, and it was linear, but it definitely wasn't.
It never is, though, is it?
It definitely wasn't linear, but kind of like from that rock bottom, very slowly over the next few years, I did start to build myself up. And I started to be honest, I think it was from like social media and stuff like that. I was following certain coaches, and I really started to realize like, I'm the one who's created my shit life, not God, not the universe. It's me. Yes, I had a shitty childhood. That shouldn't have happened, but it did. There's nothing I could have done about that. But what I can do as an adult is I get to choose my own life. If I want to be super successful, I can be. If I want to be super happy, I can be. I have the power. So eventually I started to take responsibility and accountability for myself, started doing the deep inner work. And it just started like, funny enough, like I started being really happy. I started growing in the self-worth and the confidence. Life started to look beautiful, and just everything changed. Absolutely everything changed. But it only started when I took that responsibility for myself, and it took a long time for me to do that.
Yeah, I think the key things that I picked up in there, Dion, there was like so much. I could probably have a 10-hour podcast with you, right? So some of the key things that I picked up there were, as a child, you were vulnerable to what was around you. So you were exposed to things that you didn't know whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. That's all you knew. So at that time, absolutely, there's not a huge amount that you can do. As you've gone through life, you've started to recognize, wait a minute, That was then, and this is now. I think one of the things that really jumped out for me was the going along life where it all looked shiny on the outside. And I think from my own personal experience and from clients, when people go so far with their success or financial abundance or relationships, then all of a sudden something happens and either they start sabotaging things, they don't believe that they're worthy of having it, they start creating problems in their own life. And then a bit like what has happened for me, it's also happened for you, where you're like, so how come that was good then? And yet for some reason I can't hold on to that? Or what is the journey that I'm going on, or what's the journey I'm not going on to get me to be able to stay on this constant upward trajectory? Because it's like you would go so far and then fall really quite far down, and it's like, ouch, that's quite far to fall. But I would ask you this question, because I'm thinking about myself here, right, when I'm asking you this. I wondered as well at the time, you know, when I felt like things were flying and I had a BMW and I had money and I had a flat and all these things, it was party central, and then I think back and I'm like, wonder how much I was just sitting really in my ego there and not
so much.
Oh my goodness, right, okay, so you totally get this, right? It was just when I was listening I thought, sounds familiar. And I do believe that when you're writing checks from your ego, it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable, and you eventually burn out mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, because that's usually the times when we're filling our body with all the wrong things, toxins, poisons, substances, toxic words to ourselves, toxic people, or rather toxic behaviors from other people. And it just becomes this sort of swirling spiral. And then eventually one day you're so down there that you have to have the awakening, because there's no further down to go at that point. You're at that ultimate low, and it's like, okay, this is going to be hard work. I'm probably going to skin my knees 1,000 times by the amount of times I fall on the climb on the way out. But before we actually started the recording, you'd said something and it just so strikes home with me, which is like, no one's coming to save you. Nobody. Like, I used to sit in my old world, in my old life, and honestly, and tell me if you felt the same, right, or how you felt about it. But I used to sit and think, I wish someone would pull me out of this. Like, where is the great guy, or where is the great such and such that's just going to put a hand in, pull me out and go, right, I'm going to give you a start. Guess what? That doesn't happen. Or if it does, it's like a chance in a million. It all comes down to what you do. And you talked about that, was taking action and taking back that control. So if we talk a little bit about that healing journey. So what were you mentioned things like people pleasing, blending in, self-worth.
Yeah.
So when it comes to things like RTT, or even the work that you've done on yourself, how does that help connect with those issues that have now not necessarily disappeared 100%, but they've shifted your perspective, that you can now get on with your life in a really successful way?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, like the first thing, like we have to do, because no one is coming to save us. Like, unfortunately, life isn't a fucking fairy tale, even though that's the sort of stuff that we're brought up on watching as children and like reading in books. Like, real life is not like that. So we've got to take the radical responsibility and accountability for ourselves. And then it's a case of just like really, really getting to know ourselves, like getting really, really bloody self-aware. Now, depending on kind of like how we've been brought up, there is going to be a set of basically like codes that have been like embedded into us. For myself, it was very low self-worth. I felt rejected as a child. So I had these kind of like certain, basically like really negative inner beliefs that had been kind of embedded in my subconscious. Now, obviously, I know, like you doing hypnotherapy, like you'll know that the subconscious is responsible for like 90 and 95% of our entire lives. So your thoughts create your feelings, feelings create your actions, actions control like your entire life. So if you've got negative subconscious beliefs, which have been like really deeply embedded in there, you're going to be taking certain actions which are not in alignment with what you actually want. So I think just getting really, really aware of that. So take the responsibility, start having to think, right, okay, like what beliefs do I have about myself? The main one is usually that I'm not good enough. It's the low self-worth. It's like, it's the most common one. Like so many of us have had that. And then getting to work on it. So for me, like rapid transformational therapy, it absolutely changed my life, but it didn't save me. Nothing could save me. So I had to do that first. Once I started kind of thinking like, right, what am I doing which isn't in alignment like with my life? Right, okay, I'm in a really toxic relationship. I'm getting absolutely hammered on the weekends. Okay, maybe I should not do those things anymore. Okay, so we'll stop doing those. And then let's have a look at stuff like the rapid transformational therapy. So I had my first session. When was that? I think that was back in 2021 now. And so I already knew that the thing I wanted to work on the most was not feeling good enough. I was like, right, I'm starting to do well in business again. I'd set up another business that was doing well. I was making like more money than I'd ever made, which was awesome. And I was doing kind of like a lot of the right things. But I still had that kind of belief, and I was like, right, I need to shift it because it's obviously just very deeply embedded in me that I don't feel good enough. I've held on to it now for 30 years by that point. So I had a rapid transformational therapy session on that, and it did absolutely change my life. Like even just after that session, I remember just feeling so much lighter. And it was funny because I had a one-to-one client that I was speaking to like just after my session, and we were WhatsApping, like I was giving her a bit of coaching after I just had my session. And I'll never forget, she was like, Dion, she was like, you sound so different. She was like, have you done something? She was like, you just sound, she was like, your voice just sounds so much lighter. And she was like, she was like, I don't know what it is. She was like, you just sound like free. And I was like, funny enough, I've just had this RTT session, like all around, like building my self-worth and blah, 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 blah. And she was like, fucking hell, Dion. She was like, you can hear it in your voice. I hadn't even told my client what I'd been up to. Like, that's how much of a difference it was making. So from that session, then again, it's kind of like you're shedding an old skin. So I'd kind of got into a new version of myself. So I started taking again some more better actions. My beliefs and my thought system was getting better. So again, everything was starting to get more in alignment with what I actually wanted. Again, did that one session like save me, like fix everything? No, but what it did is it helped me grow into a new version of myself. So then I could kind of handle challenges better. I had better thoughts, better feelings, better beliefs. And it's like, do you know when you play that, like, can you remember the old like Nintendos or like Sega Mega Drive?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you would play the game. I can't remember the game. I think it was like all of them, but you would play the game like Street Fighter or something. And then every time you would get to the end of the level, you would have to fight the boss. And so then you would go like level 1, you have to fight the boss. End of level 2, you have to fight the boss. New level, fight the boss. And it's like every time you have like an RTT session or a hypnotherapy session or a whatever's just working really well for you, it's like, it's not that you don't ever have fears and challenges and problems in your life, but you're at a new level where you fight the boss.
That just literally so many things to unpack there. One, how you sounded after your session. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I have a client session, right, I'll look at them and they actually physically look different.
Yes.
I'll look at their face and I'll say, right, so you're glowing, you're smiling without noticing it, and your whole demeanor has just shifted. And then they'll come away back and maybe send me an email or a message or something and say, do you know, so many people are just like, there's something really different about you, and I can't, have you changed your hair? Have you changed, is it different makeup? And they're like, no. And I'm like, so that talks about the absolute importance of working from the inside. You can get a haircut, you can change your clothes, you can change your makeup, you can do all the external things that you want. You can go and get a new job, you can get a new partner. That's all great, but nothing will light you up in every way than the day that you decide that you want to work on yourself, like from the inside out. That's the transformation. And just you talking about that there, about how they change their voice and everything shifts. That is so true. And your analogy, by the way, I loved I actually was Street Fighter. That was my favourite game. Yes. And even when it was on pairs, I used to, with my person that I was playing with, I go, just get out of the way. So I can do it for both people.
It was such a good game.
I was always must have been a boss, right? Even from day one, like I knew I was like, no, I don't need a partner here. Just let me do this on my own. But when you were talking about the levels, so my analogy is I love yours, but I'll share mine because it's the principle's the same. So I'll say to a client, right, imagine that you have this big massive hill that you want to climb, right? So at the beginning, you are clueless, you are not even prepared, your view of the world, it's actually okay. You can see quite far, it's pleasant. But when you get yourself up this mountain a little bit, first of all, look at what you can see when you're further up there. It is so much further out because you can see further into the distance. In other words, your future has just got bigger because what you couldn't see down there, you can now see from here. And then what I've said to them is, this is the reality of life. Climb, 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 go down a bit. Climb, climb, climb. But what are you noticing? I'll say to them, you're never going back to the bottom because there's something inside you, fundamentally, core beliefs, mindset, attitude, courage, whatever it is, you've made a decision, even if you don't know it, but internally, that life, you just don't want to go back to that. So even although you might not be there, you're still not there. So it's like this ever up and down, slowly and gently, no sprint, it's a marathon. It's constant evolution. So and I say to them, it's like, so here's the best part. I mean, when you get to the top, it's brilliant. But guess what? You're just going to start climbing another mountain, but one that's higher than the one that you've been on. There's no end point. So you must have many destinations along the way to motivate and inspire you. But ultimately, it's an ongoing journey of self-discovery. I think you even mentioned that earlier. You said something about getting to know yourself. And I put a post up in that social media recently, and loads of people said, oh gosh, this is the main thing. If you don't know yourself, how can you actually become all you can be? If you actually don't know what you're capable of. And you've talked about that today. To find out all of those things, you have to know what's holding you back.
Absolutely.
And that's the power of the inner work, the hypnosis, the RTT, the whole shooting match that comes into the picture here. It's about getting to know yourself. Now, I want to ask you a few questions with something else that you mentioned. I told you I could have a 10-hour podcast with you. You're speaking my language, right? Something else you mentioned, and I want to get your input on this. You said, and it's funny how when we talk, we just say it off the cuff, but I'm like, no, we're going to dive into this. You said about who you'd become, right, at each stage. And so for anyone listening in, this is what I call part of my own program. I call this the identity shift. So if you want to achieve, something in your life, and you're sitting where you are right now, and you think, I want this dream over here. So let's say if I say to myself, right, I'll actually have this conversation with myself, and I'll say, okay, Debbie, so you want to be, this level of success in your business. So I hear the voice in my head that says, okay, people that are that successful are not watching a rerun of Friends at 12 o'clock on a midday, in a midweek. They're just not. They are not doing that. They are showing up and putting the graft in. And that's how I then can turn it around and move myself forward. So I'd like to share a little bit about, I guess, where your identity began to shift into the different levels and what that looked like for you, and what you needed to become to do the things that you want to accomplish now.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like it definitely wasn't linear. And I think the thing that had held me back for so long was it was the low self-worth and a lot of self-doubt as well. But when I set up my new business, so this was back in 2019 as a virtual assistant, I started obviously being a lot more present on social media. I hadn't really been on that for a few years. And I'd always had this, it was just a bullshit excuse. One of the ones we come up with is when I would see super successful people, I was always like one of these people who was like, oh, well, it's all right for them because they had rich parents, or they were given inheritance, or they had insert bullshit excuse here. So I always kind of like had that, but then I started seeing these really super successful people who's had childhoods which were like 10 times worse than mine. And then I was like, oh shit, okay, I can't use that excuse for them. Right, how did they do it? So I would start looking into these people and be like, right, okay, so what actions did they take? Like, because if they can do it, then surely I can. Like, what is... Like, it's like, there has to be a way, like, it must be possible. So I started having a look at what other people had been doing. And it was, a lot of it was just putting in the graft, being incredibly, sorry, I'm just coming over a cold. I feel myself about to sneeze. Sorry if you can hear.
That's okay. That's okay.
So I started having a look at these people, and one of the things I realized they were doing was, they were doing really hard graft. So just, they were working a lot on themselves, obviously on their businesses as well, but being very, very intentional with what they actually wanted to achieve. And the main thing was just that it was courageous, consistent action. That's the main thing. The thing is, like, you can take all the courses in the world, you can do all the therapy in the world, you can do everything, but the thing that's going to get you to where you want to be more than anything is courageous as fuck, consistent action.
Putting in the reps. There's no other way. And even on the days where you just don't want to do it, you sometimes just have to show up regardless. And even if you're not giving your all, so even if you're not always firing it, you know, so you've got this version of yourself that does all these things and is capable of all of that. And there are times in life where we're just not firing on all cylinders. But I think one of the things that I know from my own experience is, even on the days I don't want to, I'll still even do something. Now, I might not do everything, but I know that that's the routine, or that's the expectations on myself. But on the days that I'm maybe struggling with things, I'll at the very least take one action. And it might be that took me all the effort of the day to get that post out on social media, or to, you know, make contact with a potential client, or whatever it is. But I think it's just about, you're right, pick out the intentional actions, the things that are actually going to move you forward, whether it's a business you have, whether it's even if you're in an employment and you're not happy, sometimes it's even just about taking that one tiny action to figure out what is it I do want, what are my values, what are my goals, does this job suit me? Because if it doesn't, what am I doing about it? Or am I going to have a level of acceptance that I'm staying here? And that's okay too. But that just means you need to know what you're saying no to. If you're saying yes to that, what does that mean you're saying no to? So just really asking yourself those challenging questions. And then even if it's just like one baby step, because the reps build over time. That's one of the things that I've found is, if you start trying to do 20 new things on one go, you burn out quite quickly. So I think you're better with the shifts, picking one or two things at a time. So like, I don't know about you, but like, I'll say to people, maybe if they're working on something, let's maybe look at this as a focal area to start with. That's the thing we're going to work on. Once you've got a handle on that, then we can go down another level. Then we can go down another level, and you just keep kind of peeling back the onion to help people shift and change internally, which will then create externally the life that they actually want. Absolutely. So any other input that you've got? I'd love to hear it if there's any other insights.
I think one of the main things as well is like knowing that, like, it's not about not feeling fear. Like, we're human, and it's completely normal to feel fearful. It could be like feeling fear around setting up a new business or leaving a job or raising your prices or whatever it is. Feeling fear is normal. So it's not about being fearless. It's about feeling the fear and doing the thing anyways. And the thing is the more you do that, the more you realize that you're going to be okay. Because people will avoid taking action because of fear or disappointment in case the worst happens. But like, the worst probably isn't going to happen. Like, it probably isn't going to happen. And even if it does, you're going to be all right.
Well, mostly it's not a life or death experience. It's just our imagination that has created this situation that's like, well, if I go for that job and I don't get it, what will people say about me? Will everybody be talking about it? And so what if they are? Like, but for us as humans, we have this perception about rejection and being humiliated and all this stuff. So actually we then don't try. But if we can have that level of acceptance that, you know, I accept that this is scary and that's okay. So it's scary and that's okay, or I'm worried or I'm nervous and that's okay. Just be okay with feeling that way. And then that just almost takes the power out of it, so that you can even just take that tiny little baby step forward. So it's been absolutely brilliant having you on today. I think I could have about 100 topics to talk to you about. What would be like, what could we leave? So I just gave one little tip there about having that acceptance of how we feel. So when you acknowledge how you feel, you accept it, you can speak it out loud, and that instantly, you know, when you name it, it takes the power out of it. So it makes it a little bit easier to be able to take a step forward. What would be something that you could share, maybe a tip or something that you find that's particularly helpful that we could share with the audience that might help them, whether it's their confidence, their self-worth, or even just getting moving forward towards creating that life that they really want?
So one thing I've started doing recently, so I never liked affirmations. I used to always think they were just like way too surface level. I was told for years, do affirmations. So I would find myself so often saying in the mirror, talking to myself, things like, I am a millionaire, I am so confident, blah, blah, blah. I am all of these things. And I could hear this voice in my head, which was like, no, you're not. You liar. So I was always like, nah, affirmations are what a load of crap they are. However, the words we say to ourselves are also so bloody powerful, and the brain also does learn by repetition.
Correct.
So you can say affirmations in a way which actually work and which are super, super powerful. And it's putting the words, I am a match for, in front of them. So for example, I am a match for having a 6-figure business. I am a match for having phenomenal self-confidence. I am a match for meeting the man of my dreams, whatever it is, because it's kind of basically saying like you're in the process of doing it. So your brain is going to be a lot more likely to actually get on board with it. And it's therefore going to be a lot easier to actually manifest the thing that it is you want. So it's so simple, so easy to do, so quick. So whatever it is, like you do want in life, like let's say if you're building a business, you want to make, I don't know, 6 figures, rather than saying like, I have a 6-figure business, if that doesn't feel right, then it's like, you're going to be kind of like fighting yourself. So instead, just put the words, I am a match for, because then your brain can actually get excited by it and think, I am a match
for that.
And actually make it happen.
Yeah, and you're right. The more that the brain hears it, eventually through time. So unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's the negative things that we hear a lot of that then stay with us. But we can rewire our own mind by repetition of saying the things that we want in life. And as you say, saying that we're a match for it. I absolutely love that one. I'll be doing that one from today because I really like it. Thanks for the tip. So I hope everyone that you've really enjoyed today. And before we wrap up, I know that all of the details will be how to contact me will be in the description. And equally, Dionne, before you go, what is the best way to reach out to you if anyone wants to talk to you more about what you do or about RTT or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Dion Slater, or Instagram, which is Dion_Slater_, or my website, dionslater.com.
There we go. Nice and simple, easy to find. So I'll put all the details, Dion, into the description for anyone that wants to pick up and speak to you a little bit more. I've loved having you on. It's been such an honour. Thank you so much. And I will let you go. Thanks everyone for tuning in today, and I'll see you same time, same place next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you've taken away something valuable, even a golden nugget that will help you move forward with your life so that you can become the best version of yourself and really have that life that you love. So I will see you back here every Tuesday. A new episode will be released, same time, same place. And if you want to sign up so that you're notified when these new episodes are live for you to listen to, then all the details will be in the description. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.